Hi everyone, this is the last game in the series on Nathan Gittens 4 NCL games, and in this game it is 3-2 versus Gloucestershire Gambit. He was white against an opponent called John Waterfield, whose ELO was 2005 at the time, and he also played in the British Championships, albeit not doing too well, but it's still an achievement just to get there because you have to win an open section. So this is a tough opponent, this. But Nathan does have the advantage of the white pieces. And it's an interesting game because he faces his own defence against d4, i.e. the Benko Gambit. You see, black's offering a pawn to hack white's queenside up. However, white declines it with b6, trying to keep lines closed on the queen side. And black now plays a5, freeing up the a6 square for the bishop. And this continuation is actually quite good for black, although not too sure on the theory of it. Might be worth doing some more research on it. Black has a good win percentage though in Mega Base of around 50%, or it's like 40-something%. And it's perfectly playable. And sure enough, both players soon start to play very slowly due to this being a sideline. A playable sideline, of course. Knight c3, bishop a6. That's the idea, of course, to clear the a6 square for the bishop. And after e4, protecting the centre, black can now play bishop takes f1, king takes f1, or white can't castle now, although white's king is still pretty safe because you can play g3 and put the king on g2 and it's hard to attack. And also, black's giving up a developed piece for an undeveloped piece. d6. Knight f3, knight bd7, now g3, preparing to hide the king on g2. Black feeding shadows, putting the bishop on the very strong long diagonal. And now, interesting, white can play. If white plays, white can play b7, attacking the rook. Rook a7, knight d2, and rook takes b7. With a sharp game with chances for both sides. Knight d2 was played, and now comes queen takes b6, f4, a risky move trying to play e5 and hack black up, although white's king is potentially a bit exposed now. Castles. This position is quite a Benoni like now, what the pawn structure is, if black played e6. Oh, that's like the timing of attack. Rook e1, if e5 then the best given is takes and f takes. Sorry, if takes f takes, then the e5 pawn hangs once the knight moves. Rook e1, queen b7. Maybe some x-ray threats against the white king on the long diagonal, although there is some pawns in the way. But with e6, things can easily open up, and white's king may potentially feel more uncomfortable. Knight f3. Knight b6, preparing to plonk the knight into c4, queen e2, stopping that. And now rook a b8, rook b1, and queen d7 seems to give black maybe a slight advantage, or a very good position anyway. I don't think white can't really play f5 because it leaves a massive hole on e5. And black's chances are slightly preferable here. Instead, e6 was played. And now if d takes e6, f takes e6, and now if e5, then d takes e5, queen takes e5, attacking e6 and c5, rook f7. If queen takes e6, then rook e8, and white has to take. And material is even here with a rook, knight and pawn balancing the queen, but black is preferred here because white's undeveloped on the queen side and black can generate threats more easily. Queen takes c5 is preferable. Now e5, trying to open lines up and expose white's king because black's down the pawn here, but has a massive lead in development with white's bishop and rook playing cards. And now king g1, getting the king off the dangerous diagonal. If queen takes f3, by the way, queen takes b6 can be played. E takes f4, bishop takes f4, and knight h5, and black's got very strong compensation for the pawn. There's threats of winning the pawn now in f4 and exposing white's king. White's queen is awkwardly placed because bishop d4 check, if the square wasn't covered, could win the queen. And white has to be very careful here. Black's got good dynamic chances. I think the engine's given advantage to white here, but in a game between humans, black's kingside pressure is very dangerous. However, white plays knight b5, and after queen c6, the best move here is a little tactic. If you want to try and spot it, please stop the video, although it's not that hard to spot, but it equalises the game. You can just take the pawn on d6, and after queen takes, you have a fight with e5, and after queen d5 rook takes f6. In this dynamic position, the players actually agreed a draw, because they were both only had about half an hour left to get to time control, which is 19 moves away. And also, I think they were taking draws on the top boards quite quickly, I remember, because we were so heavily upgraded on the bottom boards. There's two other games from this match I've done videos on. One is my game against Jeffrey Taylor, and the other is Andrew Horton versus Phil Dodwell, which are both instructive games and interesting, and more interesting than this one. I would assess this position as equal, although there is chances for both sides. Black's got a dynamic lead in development, with white's bishop and rook uncoordinated. However, and white's king's a bit exposed potentially, but black has several pawn weaknesses. a5, c5 and e6 are all isolated. Black's got the better bishop. Black's knight is potentially more dangerous, but the pawn weaknesses and then black's development advantage, I'd say, cancel each other out and make the position dynamically equal, although the players agreed to a draw. Both players, I presume, are quite happy. Nathan, I presume, was happy to draw against someone higher rated, and his opponent, John, would have been happy to draw as black, because you sometimes get players as black offering quick draws a lot. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this game, and this concludes the series on Nathan's 4NTL games. I hope if he's watching, he's enjoyed them as well, having them annotated. Please leave any comments and thoughts. Thanks very much.